All right, if you've watched any number of my videos, you know that I create these every morning, and they completely revolve around topics that I want to think about or talk about or really need to hear about for myself. And today I'm dealing with a situation that has a lot of ambiguity, and it's a very persistent kind of ambiguity. And I've been learning actually over the past 6 months or so how to relate to these situations of ambiguity. There's a paradox in relating to ambiguous situations. On the one hand, if you try to force your way or get your way, you forego playing a deeper game that could get you more rewards. Sometimes the game itself is a test that gives you access to more opportunities and ambiguity, and your ability to tolerate ambiguity and navigate and play within ambiguity without shutting it down and closing it down out of insecurity is a test that other people give you, and is a test that life itself gives you that enables you to advance. So sometimes these ambiguous situations, it's not that we always need to shut them down. And on the other hand, ambiguity is very often a tool that people will use to manipulate you, to lead you on to take advantage of your resources and your attention with the promise of an opportunity that's not real. So ambiguity is the perfect worm on the hook for you, for people to get what they want from you. And so these are the two things. Ambiguity can be a very, very opportunity rich experience where you grow and you learn how to uh, play and be an agentic, freedom oriented person in a context that lacks constraints, which is like a core life skill and one of the most enriching kinds of opportunities and experiences that you can have. Or uh, it's something you really need to keep your eye out for and learn how to dissolve and neutralize as soon as possible. So, um, that's what I want to address today is how to engage with ambiguity more on this side of the equation. To be honest with you, more on the ambiguity as potentially um, ambiguity as potentially well, like, I'm totally blanking here. um, Manipulative. Thank you to nobody. um, but I want to talk about the tool that I use, a core tool that I've used, and it has to be wielded with a degree of skill, with like an intermediate degree of skill, for it to be effective with any degree of regularity. So you are in a situation, let's say, right, where you don't need to be certain in order to move. You need a way to provoke the system, to provoke the situation, to provoke the person, so that the next move becomes legible. This is a concept, and this is what I want to talk about today. This is a concept called polarity. Polarity as an instrument. That's the topic that I want to discuss today. Polarity as an instrument, where you force a system to show its hand, or force a person to show their hand, force the universe to show its hand to you. And again, not every situation of ambiguity calls for polarity. Not every moment is polarity the best option. But sometimes it is. And when it is, you want to know what it is and you want to know how to use it. And I didn't really. I thought, what's the alternative to polarity? The alternative to polarity is having no strategy and being subject. Really, the alternative to polarity is simping or subjecting yourself to the whims of the circumstance. So polarity is a way of introducing self-authorship into an external situation. It's possible to introduce self-authorship into your own internal world anytime you want. You have agency there, an unlimited degree of agency internally. But when the external world, when other people and other situations and other circumstances are forcing ambiguity upon you and being uncooperative with you, This is your way to insert authorship into that situation where you say, I'm setting the frame here. I'm setting the frame in this situation. Okay. This could be multiple things. This could be an employer you're negotiating a salary with. This could be a friendship or an opportunity. This could be, very often this arises in dating contexts, right? Anytime where there is, like as Orion Taraban talks about, the exchange of, what does he call it? Unequal good, the exchange of unequal goods of approximate value, or something like that, right? Anytime that this occurs, one party or both are going to want to take advantage of any ambiguity in the situation to increase their leverage. And so you want to be able to, in that case, polarize that ambiguity. So think of ambiguity as a cloud and polarity as a force which dispels that cloud and dissipates that cloud, so that clarity replaces that cloudiness, right? So polarity is this method. It introduces a clear tension. Polarity introduces this tension: X or Y. What's it going to be, right? And often the art of introducing or using the tool or the method of polarity is not as simple as saying, hey, here's your options, choice one or choice two. This will often actually not even engage the ambiguity, and it gives the other person kind of a cover, kind of an excuse to say, well, that's rude, right? So what you want to do is you want to introduce polarity, maximum polarity, as subtly as possible, so that the person that is trying to leverage ambiguity doesn't even know that you are using polarity as a tool. Because the less they perceive you're using polarity as a tool, the more data you're going to get from them. And that's what we're going to get into today. So the purpose of introducing polarity is that is not to win this game. It's not a final it's not a game winning point strategy. It's an observational strategy. It's a recuperation strategy. It's a resynthesis strategy. So here are some examples of situations of ambiguity. Number one, you give notice. And this is a way of introducing polarity. You give notice at your job, not because you're confident, but because you want to see whether your conviction is structural or impulsive. Number two, you schedule an event. The event that clears ambiguity, not to guarantee a turnout, but to test whether the project generates momentum under a deadline, right? Number three is that you cut a revenue stream, not to collapse the business, but to watch what the core, to basically watch what core problem that constraint clarifies. And number four, you move forward with a conversation. You say, you know what, I'm having this conversation with you, not to resolve the friendship, but to surface the incompatibility instead of speculating about it, right? The system doesn't respond to hesitation, it responds to leverage. So, why deliberation fails without pressure? Deliberation works when the options are constrained. When all paths that you have are theoretical, deliberation becomes recursive. Your mind loops because nothing in the environment is pushing back on theory. That's why most people stall in transitions. They aren't facing too many options. They're avoiding the cost-bearing move that would collapse the illusion of optionality. Because this is why ambiguity is allowed to hold. It's because you want something. You want something, and there's a possibility that you actually this thing that you want could be real. And it's not certain, right? So you want to keep some part of you, even though you desire clarity, you desire certainty, you desire determination. Part of you wants to keep the ambiguity alive because it's within that ambiguity that the possibility of getting what you want resides. And you theorize about that. You're like, oh, this could happen. I could do this. I could play the game this way. I could get that thing. And you're licking your lips and you're like, oh man, I could totally game my way to an end game where I have that and I'm there and this is a part of my life and it's all working out, right? And so you're keeping that ambiguity alive because to you it feels like story of you having the thing you want is still happening. But what's actually happening is the other person or the other side of that circumstance is leveraging your desire to farm your inputs, whether that's energetic input or intentional input or work input, right? Maybe a boss is telling you that there's a raise at hand or a promotion at hand to get you to work more, but that promotion or that raise isn't real. There's boarding opportunity that is presenting to you as like a real legitimate opportunity to move forward on your terms, but in reality, they are aware that that's never going to happen because that's not something that they desire. But for them, the attentional input is giving them something they want in the now, right? So, that's why people stall in these transitions. That they aren't facing too many options. They're avoiding the cost-bearing move that would collapse, that illusion of optionality. So, polarity creates the cost for the other person. It makes the dilemma real for them. It also makes the cost real for you because now you lose the illusion. Now you lose the option. You're putting, you're pushing your chips into the table and saying, you know what, this chance that I might get what I want, I'm pushing this onto the table, and I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait for the flop here, and I'm going to say, whatever the cards are, I'm taking life on life's terms. I'm going to let this hand play out. And if I win, I'm raking it in. And if not, I lose those chips, and I'll live to play another day. Right? So what that polarity does is it collapses the abstract into the observable. So I want to frame this philosophically because just it's just a tick that I have. So a philosopher I've mentioned in a bunch of other videos, John Dewey, he called this mode of thinking inquiry under indeterminacy. So you don't act because you're confident. You act because the only way to reveal the structure that's at hand when you can't perceive it because it's clouded, the only way to reveal that structure is to perturb it. This is not trial and error. It's trial as method. A move made not to win, but to extract data from resistance. This is the whole frame. This is the whole point of this video. I know today's like rambly. Today's a rambly, indirect, kind of, I don't know, man, barely holding the thread kind of day for me in content mind world. But like the whole thesis I'm talking about today is using polarity as using this way of saying, okay, I'm forcing this cloud to become clear by insisting upon a binary as subtly as possible, not in order to rush to the end game, but to get data. Right? So again, this is not a trial and error. It is a trial where I'm introducing polarity as a provisional test. Polarity as test. That's the method, right? Because what you think that you think the solution to ambiguity is resolution, but it's not, because what you might do is end up creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where you force the game to end in a way that is unfavorable to you unnecessarily. Where you might actually win this game, but if you push polarity as an end game strategy too hard, well, what you're doing is you're giving that situation an ultimatum, and that's not an ultimatum is not the same thing as polarity. An ultimatum is saying I'm insecure, I'm too insecure to play the game of uncertainty, and I would rather forego the opportunity to win than experience the discomfort of not knowing if I'm going to win any longer. And that's just if that's true, truly, truly true, fair enough, man. And nobody can judge you for that. But what I think happens is a lot of people introduce ultimatums into situations of ambiguity because they don't know what else to do. They don't have any other tools in their tool belt. Where it's like, okay, your instinct is right to use polarity in this situation to create clarity for yourself. But your mistake or your misstep was in using polarity as an end game strategy rather than a testing strategy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a low stakes clarifying polarity where it has enough pressure where they have to give you data, the exact data that clarifies, that disambiguates the situation, but doesn't force an end game, right? And then you get to decide what to do. So William James, another philosopher, he approached the same idea from another angle, which is that truth is what endures friction. So you don't test beliefs by refining them. You test them by living them into contradiction. If the system holds, it clarifies. If it breaks, it reveals. And in both frames, truth is not pre-existing. Truth is constructed through tension. So how do you implement this? Well, polarity is not chaos. Polarity is constraint with purpose. So you don't introduce tension into a situation for the sake of drama. That's what it can feel like sometimes. Hey, man, you're escalating the emotional amplitude of this situation. Unnecessary, dude. Unnecessary. It's like, okay, you can think that, you can say that, but what you're doing is you're resisting the polarity, and that's giving me data. I'm already farming data from you about this situation. That's the whole point, right? You don't introduce this polarity for the sake of drama. You do it to collapse ambiguity into contrast. So here's kind of a here's basically a working protocol for how to actually implement polarity. Where if you follow these steps, you will introduce polarity into an ambiguous situation in a low stakes enough way that will give you the data you need to enact the proper next step strategy in the game that you're playing. Number one, here's the protocol for implementing polarity into an ambiguous situation to get the data you need. Number one, articulate the ambiguity. So define what choice or direction currently feels equally weighted, right? Where you say, hey, I enjoy spending time with you, but you seem conflicted. It's I'm not saying much, right? Hey, we had this conversation about a raise. It's been 6 months, right? These two things, right? Hey, you said that, you've wanted to hang out. I've asked you to hang out 3 times, and I've gotten kind of a rescheduling type of response, right? Articulate the ambiguity. It's a very small, very thin action that you take, but it is the reason it's such a small action is because it's such a dense action. It is going to have a very powerful, outsized impact on the situation. Just the fact that you're articulating ambiguity, it may actually be all you need to do. It in itself is a very atomic action to articulate the ambiguity. So articulate the ambiguity. Number two, propose the binary. So you frame two extreme versions of the choice, not to oversimplify, but to create maximum contrast, right? Like, I'm more than happy to be friends, but I would like this to be more. I would like it to look like this. Hey, I love my job. And this is how I see myself functioning here, right? But this is the life that I need, and this is the role that I need, and this is the life I'm living. This is the story I'm living over here. This is the opportunity you're giving me over here. So you propose that. So you articulate the ambiguity, and then you propose a binary. And then the third step, articulate ambiguity, propose a binary, and then you test one. You move decisively in one direction, not because it's the right direction, but because it will trigger feedback, right? Usually you go in the direction that you know is going to more irritate the circumstance, right? You polarize it, right? Maybe you ask for a kiss. or you ask for a specific number amount in your raise, or you ask for a specific date in your job to say, this is when I'm going to, um, or say, I would like to begin a new role at this time, and we can begin a 90-day trial where we review my performance, and I'll be making this much, and tell me what you think about that. You propose the raise, you send it, and you say, this is the date. And that's going to trigger, again, point isn't to get that job. The point is that's the ultimatum, right? You don't want to say, hey boss man, here's my proposal for a new job. If you don't give it to me, I'm going to start applying for other jobs. Don't do that. That is the worst strategy. That's using polarity as an end game strategy. That's called ultimatum, and that comes off as deeply insecure and unsettling and unsafe, and will become a self-fulfilling prophecy where your attempt to resolve the ambiguity just destroys the opportunity itself entirely, unnecessarily, when you actually might have won, when you actually might have gotten what you. So you articulate the ambiguity, you propose a binary, you test one, and then you watch what breaks. You don't look for confirmation of, I got what I wanted. You don't look for that. You look for a signal. The whole point is to get a signal. Energy loss, or dissonance, or reversal, or momentum. You're not trying to resolve the question. You're trying to make it observable. So how do we put all this together? Most people mistake suspension for caution, but suspension is a system state. It will not exit on its own, and no amount of reflection inside the vacuum will give you more traction. If the context won't give you a clear path, then you install that path for yourself, and you push until you meet resistance, and then you treat resistance as your next data set. The resistance you get, or the green light, like when you introduce polarity into a situation, you're going to get a red light, a yellow light, or a green light. Probably a yellow light. Because what's that? Ambiguous contexts push back. They give you ambiguity. And they like ambiguous situations love to respond to polarity with more ambiguity, which is why polarity has to be recursive. I'm going to continue to introduce polarity into this situation, not as an endgame strategy, but as a data harvesting strategy. So the more yellow lights you give me, the more clarity it gives me that the longer you persist in delaying the ambiguous state intentionally and resist my ambiguity, the more I know that preserving ambiguity is your end game, and this is the manipulative side of this. And now I can discard any investment I have in this as whatever it is, and I can move on and redirect and reinvest and refocus my efforts and energies and resources elsewhere. So if you don't have, if your context is giving you yellow light after yellow light after yellow light, that's really clear information. Even though yellow lights are ambiguous, or more ambiguous than red or green, a persistent yellow light in response to polarity is just as clear, right? I get it. I get this, right? And so in ambiguity, the first move is not to be correct or to insist that you get your way. In ambiguity, the first move is as subtle of a polarization as possible. Not to force a decision, but to make a decision possible.